The man who invented the mechanical hard disk was an absolute genius, because it's so well designed. Whether you use it to store your study materials or not, I strongly recommend you to understand how it works. The main components of a mechanical hard disk are a high-speed rotating platter, a flexible head arm, and a precision magnetic head. The platters are covered with a layer of magnetic material to store data. The head arm moves freely across the platters to find the location of the data. The magnetic head reads or writes the data, and it's a very clever design. Note that it doesn't touch the disk directly, but is suspended 15 nanometers above the disk. This prevents it from scratching the disk. The disk is divided into concentric tracks. Each track is divided into sectors. Each sector can store up to 4 KB of data. At the beginning of each sector, there is a boot code, which marks the start of the sector and the length of the data. At the end of each sector, there is an error correction code, which is used to check whether the data is correct or not. There is an address code in the middle of each sector, which is used to record the track where the data is located and the number of the sector. The rest of each sector is the data itself, which consists of a string of binary digits. So here's the problem. How are the binary numbers stored on the disk? Well, it's actually done by a magnetic head magnetizing the magnetic material on the platter. There's a coil on the back of the head. When an electric current passes through the coil, it creates a strong magnetic field. This magnetic field passes through a small spot on the front of the head. It passes through a gap of 15 nanometers and hits a tiny area on the disk. This area is called a magnetic field cell. It's about 90 times 100 times 125 nanometers. It's the size of a bacterium. When the magnetic field cell is subjected to the magnetic field of the magnetic head, the atoms inside it align themselves in one direction, creating a permanent magnetic field. This is the equivalent of storing a piece of data. If the magnetic field of the head changes direction, the direction of the atoms inside the magnetic field cell will also change. That's the same as changing the data. So here's the question again. How does the head read the data on the disk? Actually, it does it by sensing the magnetic field on the disk. There's a special layer of material in the middle of the head called a saw pack. It's made up of alternating layers of magnetic and non-magnetic material. When the magnetic head passes through the magnetic field on the disk, the resistance of the saw pack changes. Based on the amount of resistance, you can determine the strength of the magnetic field and read out the data. The magnetic head moves across the disk by means of a motor. At the end of the head arm is a coil. There are 2 magnets on either side of the coil. When an electric current passes through the coil, it creates an electromagnetic field. The electromagnetic field interacts with the magnetic field of the magnets to create thrust. To move the head arm across the disk, that's pretty fast. It can move 20 times a second on different tracks. And it can be fine-tuned to allow the head to quickly locate the sector where the data is. When the head doesn't need to read or write data, it returns to the edge of the platter. To avoid damage to the platters, that's how a mechanical hard disk works.